Welcome back everyone, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. I am making yet another video of a Kenmore sewing machine. This of course is another 1960s machine. This is a follow-up to the video I made on the 158904 model, which was shown in cream and lavender. This particular model is the 158.1752. Now, as I mentioned in the past, Sears had a massive sewing department. They offered a myriad of models in any given year. And just like other manufacturers, they had, good, better, best. You had everything from basic straight stitchers on up. One of the mid-tier models would have been the 158-1750. That machine would have looked similar to this one, only you would have this one dial and not this one. So you might have this machine or one that looks like it. And it would have a little hatch up here in the top where you would install a cam. This machine takes cams just like the 904 model did. Now the cams look a little bit different. They come in this box. This is a double-decker box. The first portion of this box contains a buttonhole attachment, buttonhole making attachment. And just like the one on the, this is actually the same buttonhole attachment that you would get with the 904. And it has the same really strong gear-driven plate that you put on in place of the bobbin plate. Excellent design for buttonholes. And you also get with this machine cams. Now, one of the things that's important to mention is that if you have this machine and you have the model that is the 1750, and it may have had another number designation, you won't see this dial. And that matters because this machine that I have, the one with this, it's got both dials, and then the other one that just has the upper dial. They both take cams, but the difference is that if you have the machine that is lacking this knob, then you can do zigzag in addition to decorative stitches, but you're going to have cam number one. Cam number one, it allows you to do zigzag. So this is how they were making machines back in the day. You know, you had lots of different features. As you went up in price, they would add features. So you could still do zigzag, but you had to have the cam to do it. If you don't have the cam, then it is a straight stitch machine. But this one that you're looking at does not require cam number one. It only requires cams. Again, I believe there are 14 cams here. And they all have different stitch, designs. And this set of cams will come with this machine, but you would not need the number one cam because this machine was one price up above the other model I was telling you that's missing this knob. So because this is the 1752 version, it has zigzag built in. It has a number of stitches built in, actually. It has blind stitch, for example. It has the zigzag, and then there's an actual indicator for the cam. So again, those are some of the differences. So sometimes you'll see machines that look alike, and you think, oh, I've got that machine. But then if you look more closely, you'll see differences. And I know this because I've restored all of them, and they're all equally strong. There's not a difference in quality. It's really just a difference in features, which is how a lot of products were, that's how they justified different price points back in the day. Now, one other thing I want to talk to you all about in reference to this machine. This machine came out somewhere in the mid-60s. I want to say 65, 66, 67, maybe even be a 1968. But anyway, I think there's 4 or 5 years between the lavender cream 904 model that you see in the video I just made and this one. And one of the things that changed in Kenmore machines, and it's a really interesting feature, I start to see it in 1960s, mid to late 60s Kenmores, right up through the 70s, which is when you know, the 70s, the mid 70s is the cutoff point for me, because those Kenmores are really the last of the heirloom quality all metal machines. The hybrids notwithstanding that you've seen me do videos on. Now, this machine, like many of the Kenmore models, takes low shank feet. But there's something unusual. This is a feature that Sears started offering. Again, these machines were made by Marusan in Japan. And it's a very unique feature. And it's something I've only ever seen in Kenmores when it comes to domestic sewing machines. From this, and I'm talking about vintage machines here. So, for example, take a look at the presser foot. I'm going to lift up on the lever, and when I do, you'll see it come up, and it has a very nice, let's pull this fabric out here just a minute, so you can see a little bit better, and it has a pretty good clearance. It's about average, but there's one more option. You can pull up again, and you get almost a ½ inch clearance. This is the only brand of sewing machine that I've ever seen that would do this. Now, that doesn't mean you can sew through a ½ inch of stiff board material, but if you have thick items, if you have a quilt, if you have, you know, coats that are insulated, or if you have layers of things like maybe you have garment leather and fabric combined. This is a great machine for that because you have more space to get it under the foot. And then of course, when you lower the foot, the machine should be ready to sew for you. And that's just a really neat feature. Not everyone needs this feature, but if you do, it's certainly handy to have. But again, you don't have to pull all the way up. You have, again, the first stage of presser foot lift, and then the extra, which is really neat. Okay, so I was just doing some test stitching here, and you can see, as I do with all my machines, I'm testing the stitches, and you can see it really makes just lovely stitches. I've got green thread on the back, and you'll see the again the straight stitch going right across there. Here's an example. There it is on the long stitch length, a very nice straight stitch, and then you see zigzag. And you'll notice the zigzag is a little wider than it was on the 904. As we move forward in time, sewing machines get longer stitch lengths and wider stitch widths. Not sure why, but that's what they do. Here you can see where I was testing out the blind stitch. Blind stitch is a very useful thing for those of you who do alterations when you're hemming garments. Maybe you're making an alteration so it'll fit someone else. That's a very useful thing to have. And you can see here I was testing out different versions of the zigzag. Here I shortened the stitch length, and then here I really shortened it and got myself a little bit of a, what you might call a satin stitch. And again, this was 4 layers of linen, which is nothing for this machine. I'm going to demonstrate it for you guys today, though, with something thicker. This is a piece of a cargo pant I've used before. Okay, I'm going to start out with, this is a piece of a cargo pant. You guys may have seen me sew. I had some pink thread in another machine, but this one has a beige and a green thread, so we'll be able to know which was which. I'm running out of remnants here. I'm going to have to get some more. So I'm just going to run this. I'll run it across, and again, just to re-show this, we've got multiple layers of the pocket. We've got pocket seams, and then we've got the seams in the cargo pant. So there's a good bit here for the machine to chew on. And as you can see, I think I'll just come straight across. As you can see, it's a lot easier to get it under the foot. I don't sew on things this thick typically, so my machine, I don't really need this, but some of you might. So we'll begin with a straight stitch, and I want to do long stitch length. I can do shorter. This machine will do a nice short stitch, but the short stitches don't show up very well on camera, and I want you guys to be able to see the stitch quality of the machine. It's quite nice. Let's see. I need to mention, of course, here's the switch. When you turn the machine on, the light comes on. on this model. Now, I have a size 18 needle. I decided to put a pretty hefty size needle in this particular machine. Of course, it will use smaller needles as well. And I mean, you can see how it functions. And of course, I can back tack. This machine has a lot of power. It has a 1.2 amp Kenmore motor. That's one of my favorite motors, as I've mentioned before, from this era. And you can see, I'm going to pull this up closer in a minute so you all can see the stitches that it makes. Just like I said, it just goes right through it like it's nothing. I'm going to come at I think I'll come at an angle this time and see what we can get it to do. So let's pull that up. Okay guys, I'll show you what we did. Here is the beige thread, and you can see these are the long straight stitches, very nice. And then you'll see the angle I came across at. But notice no matter how much the fabric weight and layering changes, the stitch tension remains stable and constant, and that's what you want. Here is the green, that's the bobbin thread, and again, you know, that's a lot for any machine to take on. This would be a good machine you can sew everything from garment leather to other materials. Now, one last thing I think I'll do, I think you guys saw me sew on this. This is a tote bag. It has 2 layers of, you know, pretty heavy canvas and let's say medium canvas. I don't want to, it's not like a canvas tarp, but it's a good solid weight canvas for a tote bag. And then it has this webbing. And I think on one of these I kind of sewed across it so you guys could see. So I'll pick another one of the handles here and I will sew on that for you guys. And so we've got two layers of the canvas and then this webbing for the handle of the bag here, or the tote. Now, obviously, if you were going to sew a specific project, you would, for example, put in a heavy-duty jeans needle, which is the needle type you would use for any kind of heavy fabric. Those needles have a stronger, thicker body and shaft. They're just more resilient to sewing heavy stuff. This is a size 18 leather tip needle, which is something you also want to use if you're going to sew any leather projects. That just makes the machine's job easier. Could I do it with a regular needle? Probably, but why do that? You know, why not give the machine, you know, the benefit of the doubt here and let it do its thing? So I'm going to go ahead and we'll feed it through. And then I'm trying to go slow because I'm not going around this whole bag here. And of course I can back tack even in a heavy material. And we'll turn around and go back. And I think what I might do here, let me lift my needle up. I think I'm going to let it do a little zigzag. So for those of you who might do bar tacking, I'm not having to bar tack this tote bag, but let's just assume that's something you wanted to do. So I'm gonna shift. I'll show you the controls here. I'm going to shift the machine from straight to, we'll come all the way over to 4, which is the widest of the zigzagging. And let's watch the machine do its thing. Again, it's going to be zigzagging over the canvas and the webbing. This, what I believe is nylon webbing. You know, a lot of people have bought new sewing machines before and they get so frustrated because the new machines have a hard time. A lot of those machines will not do this, right? They will fuss, they will sometimes malfunction or break when asked to do something that machines in the past always could do. So there you go. Okay, so there is the 2 layers of canvas for the tote. I did the straight stitch and then I did a zigzag right over it. And again, and has great tension. And you'll see, of course, there's the green thread. Again, just a really powerful machine. Definitely something you could also, of course, you could sew lightweight fabrics with this machine. It is, you don't have to do heavy stuff. But I find that a lot of my clients, in addition to sewing light and medium weight fabrics, they want to be able to sew things that are heavier without having to worry, without having to baby the machine. You know, the machine just needs basic care. This machine has been fully overhauled. It has been fully restored. One last thing to show all of you. I think one of my viewers has a machine similar to this and was asking about the motor. Okay, guys, so you are looking at the machine from the side, and as part of the restoration here, I of course lubricated the bearings of the motor. Now, by the time you get to this point in sewing machine history, the bearings of this motor are no longer using grease. We don't use grease to lubricate them. You use sewing machine oil. Now, as I think my viewer had mentioned, it's kind of hard to know sometimes. How do I know where I'm going to do this? Because there are openings in the casing of the motor everywhere. These openings, the large ones, that's simply for air. There's a little fan inside that turns to help ventilate the motor so it doesn't get too warm. Fortunately, on this particular machine, it has been labeled with a red dot, and that may have been done at the factory. But in any case, there is one hole on either side. There's this one, and on the other side, there's one in the same position. And it's a very small hole about the size of a pinhead. And it sits at 12 o'clock, right? So if you think about this this center circle on the casing of the motor, think of it as a clock. That hole is going to be here. It's not going to be underneath. It's going to be right there. If you have a motor that has other holes, sometimes you'll see rivets where the actual shell of the motor was attached. In this case, I don't see rivets here, but of course there are some screws. Don't put oil anywhere. Never just squirt oil in any electric motor. You will damage it. You can create all kinds of problems for yourself. Don't do that. The only place that this motor should have oil is here. And let's emphasize also, when we say oil, it is 1 drop. Not 2, not 3, not 5. Because there is no giant tank or reservoir. There's just a little slot. And that 1 drop, you can actually just turn. I'm turning the hand wheel with my hand here, and you can see as the belt moves and the drive shaft, which is what the pulley's attached to, it's moving, and that will help wick down the oil you put in there. But 1 drop here, and on the other side, oh, well, that's a big heavy. That is one heavy machine. Let's see. And here you go, guys. Here's the other side of that. I just wanted to show you. Now, some of you, when you have motors like this, some sewing machines, and I think I've shown them before, some sewing machines from this period of time, they have motors that look like this. They might not say Sears. They may say some other brand. They don't always have this. Sometimes they did not provide access to the bearings. They were what the manufacturers used to refer to as lifetime sealed bearings. And you really can't get to them without disassembling the motor. And at that point, you want to start thinking about, is that something you want to do, or do you want to simply replace the motor? But here's the other hole. And like I say, you might have a machine with a motor. It could be a Kenmore or other brand. You may not see this little red dot. That red dot is put there. I think it may have been put there by the manufacturer to be helpful. Eventually, of course, companies stopped allowing, they quit doing this altogether, and every motor had sealed bearings, so you couldn't lubricate them. But in 1967, 68, which is when I think this was made, they were still allowing you to service the bearing of the motor, right? So those are the 2 spots on this particular motor. You can't generalize about all of them. This, of course, is the 1.2 amp, one of my favorite series of motors from vintage sewing machines. are the Kenmores from this era. So anyway, thank you all for watching. I ended up ending up here on the back side of a machine. Sometimes that happens. But if you have one of these machines, feel free to leave a comment there and let me know what you think about them. I think they're one of the better of the Kenmores ever made. And I say that not just because the machine weighs a lot, but because it has a remarkable drivetrain, a lot of power, one of the strongest I've ever seen on any sewing machine. The only stronger motors you can get on vintage machines, some of the companies use the 1.5 amp. How much practical difference you get in piercing power, I don't know. But I can tell you that these 1.2 amp Kenmores, the 1.3 amp white brand motors are really strong, and they can provide a lot of great performance for most sewing operations, most sewing projects that you would have on a home sewing machine. They should be able to handle it. If they can't, then you're probably looking at moving up to an industrial. But anyway, thanks for watching, folks. My sewing machine brands come in waves, and I've had a wave of Kenmores. Sears was an amazing retailer once upon a time, and so much of what they sold, including their sewing machines, were made to very high standards, and they had to be because Sears had an unconditional guarantee on so many of their products. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Stay tuned for the next video. I'm not sure which one's coming up yet, but I've had a fairly steady stream of restorations, been working on quite a few machines. I've had a backlog, and I'm trying to get through it this summer and get these machines listed and find them new homes. If you have any questions or would like to set up an appointment, a time to come by and see the machine, you are welcome to do so. Just reach out to me on the classified listing, and I can set up a time with you to, you can come out, you can test it. If you are new to sewing machines, I can show you how it operates. And if you are not new to sewing, I can give you a chance to do a test drive on this Kenmore or any of my machines. And you can bring your own fabrics, or you can use some of mine. Thanks again for watching, everyone. It's been a lot of fun doing these videos and hearing about all the stories you have with your machines. If you have comments or questions about this machine, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. Take care, and we'll see you soon.